Hello guys, you all definitely clicked on this video because you want to know what the best fire type card of all time is, didn't you? Well, compared to water types, which I did in the last video if you guys haven't seen it, fire types were definitely not as well loved, and because of that, there's probably only one answer that may be objectively right. But then again, there's data to be analyzed, so let's go look through the history to find out what the best fire type card of all time is. Starting all the way back in the Wizards era, we begin with Magmar, printed in Fossil. Magmar has a really high percentage at 27.8% usage since it was a heavy basic format with a small data pool and, let's be honest, a small card pool, probably skewing the number higher than compared to other fire types on this list. Personally, my theory is it was used in many lists to counter Scyther, who was running around since it was free retreat and just happened to also completely wall the powerful basic attacker Hitmonchan with its 30 resistance to fighting, meaning Hitmonchan's jab did literally 0, so Magmar was probably a popular pick into lists that just wanted to stop dealing with Scythers, and that's pretty much it for Magmar. If we move on to the new era, we have Typhlosion. Typhlosion was actually a fairly powerful attacker, and it was super cool as well. Its Pokemon power, Fire Recharge, let you on a coin flip heads, accelerate a fire card from the discard pile to any fire Pokemon you had in play. It was mainly partnered with Blaine's Arcanine, who hit for massive 120 damage while sacking a ton of energy, but it was also a half decent attacker itself, doing a base 60 damage, which is quite a lot back in Wizards era, and a potential 80 damage on a coin flip, which was pretty good for the time. Crazily enough, in 2002, which was an era completely filled with Feraligatr, it still saw some use, meaning it was just that friendly and fun of a deck to play. However, I think the Wizards' Keen has to go to Blaine's Arcanine. I mean, there's Magmar sitting at like 27%, but Blaine's Arcanine, in my mind, is probably one of the best attackers from the Wizards era, sitting at a clean 15.20% usage in 2001 because it had the strong support with the trainer Blaine. Blaine let you accelerate 2 fire energy to one of your Blaine's Pokemon instead of just 1 for your energy attachment that turn, meaning this puppy basically had the earliest version of Volder that existed, and you could charge it up in 2 turns. Blaine's Arcanine was just that cool of an attacker, and doing 120 basically annihilated the entire format. So it actually saw some use in its own Blaine's archetype deck, though it was mainly partnered with Typhlosion. Now here's like an honorable mention for the Wizards era is Magby, who released in Neo Genesis, and basically the stat for this guy is unknown because there's so many missing deck lists from back then, but Magby had the really cool attack Sputter, which just shut off all your opponent's Pokemon powers for the next turn. And it also had the very powerful Baby rule, which meant if anyone tried to attack into you, your opponent would flip a coin, and if tails, that attack just did not happen and it ends their turn. But it's like, why use Magby if Clef is just there and Cleffa draws you cards? Unless you really hate Pokemon powers like, I guess, Feraligatr and stuff. So most of the time, if you did include Magby, it was like a one-of tech card. Anyways, let's move on to Pokemon's modified era, which encapsulates a whole bunch of time, but basically this is when Pokemon took over from Wizards. So there is 0 data from 2003 from any major tournaments because none happened. Let's start off with a banger, and that is Blaziken from Ruby and Sapphire. Blaziken paired in tandem with a Blaziken EX was all about setting up that Blaziken EX to do 100 damage snipe to finish off the game. Blaziken had the Fire Starter Poke Power, letting you accelerate a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon once during your turn, and it was typically paired with the Energy Draw Delicate to help get energy into the discard pile, and occasionally had Rayquaza EX in there as well to create a powerful late game nuke. This Fire Starter Blaziken actually had a half decent attack as well, as its Fire Stream attack could do 50 damage to the active and 10 damage spread if you sacked a fire energy card from it, so the game plan could realistically look like you attack with Blaziken twice and then you can clean up the board with a Blaziken EX or two for the game. And they were just in the same deck. Like, you could not separate these two. They played in every single deck together because they shared the line. And the main reason I feel like Blaziken EX is in here is because of the Volcanic Ash, which for 4 energy did 100 damage snipe if you sacked 2 energy cards from it. That's a lot of damage. You gotta keep in mind, you don't think 100 damage is a lot, but that one-shots all the other Fire Starter Blazikens running around, so 100 damage is quite a lot. And this deck was so popular that it got second at Worlds in 2004 by the hands of Chris Fulop. Another super popular deck at that time was the Team Magma's box deck. Magma Box was a fairly loved archetype with Team Magma's Camerupt and Team Magma's Claydol serving as a backbone. Team Magma's Camerupt accelerated in basic energy to itself from the discard pile with his Poke Power Overheat, putting 2 damage counters on the Camerupt every time it was used, which Claydol can then move that energy off of Camerupt to charge up the Team Magma's Groudon or any other attacker that was needed at that moment. Camerupt's own attack was cute as it did 50 damage, moving energy off of Team Magma's Camerupt to another one of your Team's Magma's Pokemon, but I'm pretty sure most of the time people didn't really attack with that and just attacked with the Groudon and occasionally the Claydol. And this deck was so popular that it won Worlds in 2004 by the hands of Tsukuyoshi Yamato. And here is Magcargo. Smooth Over Magcargo is a classic card that many seasoned players should be familiar with since its ability got a reprint in the mid to late Sun and Moon era. Once during your turn, you were able to put a card from your deck on top of your deck, and it paired very nicely back then with the attacker Ludicolo being in the deck Ludicargo. Ludicolo had the cool ability which let it just draw a single card during your turn, so you were able to very easily get whatever cards you needed from the deck. And it was in a handful of other decks, but it was mainly the Ludicargo deck, since there was also like Pidgeots running around and stuff. Magcargo got second at US Nationals in 2005 by the hands of Tom Dolezal in a Ludicargo deck, and got second at Worlds in 2007 by Stefan Frum in a Flygon EX deck. Flareon EX was one of the new powerful evolution cards printed in the Delta Species set. Each one had a powerful ability, while Flareon EX's was definitely the most unique and the least splashable. Because of its ability to burn and confuse the active upon evolution, it didn't always find room in most typical EV box style decks back then. However, it did find a really nice partner in Ariados with the reactive poison attack. Ariados did 10 damage plus 30 more for each special condition affecting the active, but it did not go away between turns and instead did 20 damage based on your opponent losing a coin flip, meaning Ariados, if you just used the Flareon, hit for a base 70 damage and a potential 90 damage between turns, enough to nearly knock out many EXs. And for reference, Flareon EX's own heat tackle does 70 damage for 3 energy and damage itself for 10, where Ariados got to now use its attack for a single energy. So Flareon was a really fan favorite deck back in that era. Flareon itself got second at Worlds in 2006 in an EV box piloted by Jimmy Ballard, and got third in US Nationals 2007 by John Silvestro in a Flareon deck. as we wrap up this RSPK era, I have to mention the fact that there's like no Delta Gardevoir EX results at all, which is absolutely insane because if you've ever played this retro format, you think this card is absolutely cracked. It had the really busted Pokepower Imprison, which once during your turn, when it was in the active spot, you got to put an Imprison marker on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and then that ability was shut off for the rest of the game until that Pokemon fainted. They couldn't use that Pokemon power or Pokemon body, which is really absurdly strong, and it was frequently paired with this energy jump Delta Gardevoir, which let you move around your Hollow and Cast form energies to wherever you wanted so you can attack with whatever guy you needed at that time. And like, it was super powerful and super strong, and there are like no results for it. I've double checked, triple checked. This is a deck you should know about. It just never showed up on the map for some reason. Now we are moving on to Diamond and Pearl era, starting off with Infernape level X. Infernape level X had the powerful attack called Flare Up, which did 150 damage for 2 energy, which one-shots other Infernape level X, just for reference. But if you couldn't shuffle 8 basic fire energies from your discard pile back into your deck, the attack did nothing. This deck was built around powering up this busted attack with Infernape level X's own ability forwarding that goal. The Burning Head Pokepower let you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, keep one, and sack the other 2. To provide even more support for Infernape level X, Delcatty with Energy Draw Pokepower was used as its partner, letting you sack an energy card from your hand to draw 3 cards. And since you dealt with a ton of energy cards in your deck, you might as well just throw in a Delcatty EX, which filled your hand to 6 cards once during your turn, and had the powerful attack Upstring, which did 10 damage for each energy in your discard pile, shuffling them back into your deck after the attack. And while you're trying to power up that Infernape level X, you could attack with the regular Infernape, which for 2 fire energies did 90 damage, sacking all fire cards attaching to it, which just furthered Infernape level X's Flare Up attack. This deck was most popular in the US Nationals in 2007, but only placed high in the seniors division, with the player Daniel Shin taking first. Now this next deck is a personal favorite of mine. Magmortar level X from Mysterious Treasures and Magmortar from Secret Wonders are both really cool guys. Paired with Leafeon level X, Magmortar level X was a super cool deck, all based around getting as much energy onto one guy as much as possible. Magmortar had the attack Flame Burst, which did 20 times the number of energy attached to Magmortar, and Leafeon level X had the Pokepower Energy Forcing, which let you attach an additional energy during your turn with this ability. Leafeon level X itself had the powerful attack called Verdant Dance, which for 1 grass and 1 colorless did 30 times the number of energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Magmortar itself also had the Pokebody Flame Body, which shield 2 damage counters from Magmortar whenever you attach a fire energy card from your hand to it. Magmortar level X had the Pokepower Torrid Wave, which let you burn your opponent's defending Pokemon if it was in the active, putting 30 damage on it between turns instead of 20, and had the powerful attack Flame Burster, which for 4 energy let you do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon if you sack 2 fire energy and couldn't be used back-to-back turns. And while this deck was really fun and seemed like a very versatile deck, it didn't get any noticeable placements during its only year of use. And as we move on to the SP era, we have Infernape SP level X from Rising Rivals. SP Pokemon were cool and powerful, and it made what was a typically powerful stage 1 or 2 into a splashable big basic Pokemon with built-in support from a variety of different trainers. Infernape SP level X was decently popular when it first released, having the Fire Spin attack, which did 100 damage for 3, sacking 2 energy cards off of the Infernape. The Infernape level X also had the nifty Pokepower Intimidating Roar, which forced your opponent to switch once during your turn. Infernape was typically paired with Luxray SP level X, which upon evolution got you a free Gust. Now it's important to note that you can only get a level up into level X Pokemon when it was in the active spot, So using the trainer Poketurn was super vital, which scooped up one of your SP Pokemon from play, letting you reset your Luxray for another gust. The tool energy gain was also super critical, as it reduced your SP's Pokemon attack by 1 colorless, allowing you to split bomb for a single fire energy. Now played alongside Fernape was Ninetales with the color shift Poke Power, who could change into the type of one of your opponent's Pokemon, allowing you to hit their active for weakness and potentially take a surprise KO with its Fire Blast attack. And in the late SP era, we have Blaziken FB. And while it was trying to keep the Fire Spirit alive, it was decent but quite overshadowed by the absolute unit combo that was Garchomp C and Luxray SP, so it didn't really see any major success, aside from Henny S taking 3rd place in the Juniors division of the US Nats in 2010. This Glass Cannon type deck isn't the greatest. Blaziken FB level X increased your damage done to burnt Pokemon by 40, which is a huge damage increase. Blaziken itself was a double-edged sword, since if you use its level X's attack, Jet Suit, to do 80 to the active, you also took 40 more damage during the next turn, so unless you were able to one-shot the opposing Pokemon, it wasn't super appealing, since you'd probably just get OHKO'd the next turn. Instead, you probably focused on using Blaziken FB's attack, Lowering Flame, to switch your opponent's Pokemon, burning the new target to potentially set up for a powerful OHKO the next turn, or using Luxray SP to gust up a weak target or important board tool just to OHKO it with Blaziken FB level X, allowing your opponent to potentially get a free prize in return, but hopefully they have a worse board than you at that point. And with the whimper, the SP era comes to a close, and in with a bang came Black and White, changing the era of Pokemon as players at the time knew it. Starting off with Emboar. This era is one of my favorites in Pokemon because it is one of those funky between eras formats, where Pokemon from the late Gen 4 era clashed with the modern interpretation of Pokemon, with both Poke Powers and abilities coexisting in a weird mesh with this Boar Zone deck as one of those cool decks. Emboar had the Inferno Fandango ability, letting you attach as many fire energies from your hand you wanted during your turn, and paired with Magnezone Prime, who has the Pokebody Magnetic Draw, allowing you to fill your hand up to 6 cards once during your turn, and the powerful attack Lost Burn, which for a lightning and a colorless energy allowed you to put as many cards attached to your Pokemon into the Lost Zone as you wanted, doing 50 damage times the number of cards Lost Zone that way. And this deck was pretty popular, and Emboar itself being fairly popular before all the big EXs came out, and sometimes even being paired with the fan favorite Reshiram. While this deck is probably my favorite fire deck of all time that I learned about in my research, it wasn't the best deck in format. Now that has to go to Reshiram. However, it did win Worlds in 2011 by the hands of David Cohen, making this deck just one of those favorite little guys, I guess. Okay, now we need to get on to the prime supporter for Reshiram. Typhlosion Prime was the absolute go-to partner for Reshiram. Typhlosion had the powerful Pokebody Afterburner, which let you, once during your turn, attach a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, putting 1 damage counter on that Pokemon you powered up. They also had the cute attack that could do 70 damage, sacking an energy card from your opponent's Pokemon. However, you really just used Reshiram. Reshiram was the real star of early Black and White, with its 2 powerful attacks. For 2 colorless energy, you could use Outrage, which was 20 damage, plus 10 for each damage counter on Reshiram, which paired really nicely with that Typhlosion Prime who pinged your Reshirams. It also had this powerful secondary attack of Blue Flare, which did 120 damage, sacking 2 fire energy off of Reshiram. And keep in mind, if you're going into the Reshiram mirror, that opposing Reshiram is already probably pre-damaged from a Typhlosion, so that probably just one-shotted your opponent's Reshiram's. This combo was powerful and popular, getting 3rd at Worlds in 2011 by the hands of Tom Dozel and getting 1st by the hands of Christopher Kahn in the seniors division. And then there was Flareon, who had the cool Vengeance attack, which for a single DCE did 20 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon that was in your discard pile. This attack gets reprinted 1-for-1 on Vespiquen, who had the B Revenge attack and was much more popular, probably because it also got the support from Forest, but Flareon had the support from Plasma Engine, but at best was a rogue deck. And as XY comes around the corner, we finally get to see another fire-type Pokemon, Pyroar from Flash Fire, who was a wall deck. Pyroar's ability, Intimidating Mane, prevented damage done to it by any basic Pokemon, which basically laughed in the face of the black and white meta, which had a huge emphasis on big basic EXs. It also had the cute attack Scorching Flame, which for a single fire energy and a DCE did 60 damage or 90 if you sacked a fire energy from it. With this attack, you two-shot every big EX that was making their rounds while being completely immune to their attacks. Some decks were even cheeky and slotted in Charizard EX, who you could slowly power up on the bench and could do 150 damage for 2 fire and a DCE, cleaning up anything Pyroar failed to finish if needed. It was especially popular in 2014 since that was the year everyone and their mom decided it would be a fun time to play Version Genesect, which Pyroar kinda ate for breakfast. This meta call worked especially well at US Nationals and gave Michael Pramawat a 2nd place in 2014. And then here is Volcanion EX. A familiar face to anyone who watched my previous video. Volcanion EX was a dual fire and water type and was super powerful with the abilities team up, allowing you to sack an energy card from your hand to do an additional 30 damage to the active, and the effect could stack. Volcanic Heat for 3 energy did 130 damage and you couldn't attack the following turn, but using cards like Pokemon Ranger to remove that effect from yourself, and starting in 2017, Guzma to switch yourself out of the active and into another attacker or a bench floatstone user, many players did not get hindered by that secondary effect. Indeed, early builds of Volcanion EX were interesting, using cards like Blacksmith to power up Volcanions on the bench, and the baby Volcanion from the same set to also power up Volcanions on the bench. However, Volcanion really hit its stride in 2017, which was the meta filled with the new grass type Decidueye GX, who he hit for weakness and got access to the powerful supporter Kiawe, which you could search out turn 1 with the Lele going first, and also got access to the cheeky Turtonator GX, who could attack for 190 damage and had a really good GX attack that could re-accelerate energy cards back into play. It was a fast, aggressive deck that is really a lot of fun to play and saw great success getting first at OCIC by Pedro Eugenio Torres. Here is a deck that completely scarred me as a new player back in 2016 era, I would say. It's Houndoom EX Mill, and while not as successful as Volcanion EX, indeed this is quite possibly and certainly just another road deck, it's still completely was my first experience playing into Mill and was absolutely terrifying. It's Houndoom EX! For a single fire energy, Houndoom EX sacked the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, and that was pretty much it. Decks were paired with Eradicate from Evolutions, who had the Shadowy Bite attack, which did 60 times the number of special energy in your opponent's discard pile. And with the max counts of both DCE and Rainbow Energy flying around, that single energy attachment after several mills could hit quite high in damage and provided an aggressive option for Houndoom Mill. Here's Flareon from Ancient Origins, and with the release of Espeon GX and Energy Evolution EV in Sun and Moon base, these Gen 1 evolutions, which gave your Stage 1 Pokemon additional typings, became super popular, with Flareon being the most popular and most used variants since it gave your Espeon GX and Trash Lunch Garbs the fire typing, making it hit the most popular deck at the time. Say it with me now, Decidueye GX for weakness. In In fact, though the lightning weakness and water weakness were also key in certain matchups, some decks only ran the Flareon since the meta was so filled with Decidueye. It was also a favorite partner for the Be Revenge Vespiquen to give you an advantage with typings and give your deck more fodder Pokemon to sack in the discard, making it a very volatile and dangerous single prize deck. The highest this little fluffy bot got was 3rd in Worlds 2017 by Xander Pero, included in an Espeon Garb deck as a successful meta call. And here is the reprinting of a familiar card, Magcargo. While the attacks are different, the ability is the same. Early on, Magcargo was used in some Zoroark GX decks since the trade ability on Zoroark GX allowed you to draw any card that you wanted during your turn. The only other deck it saw massive play with when it first released was this cheeky Gramble deck that did 160 damage if your hand size was 0. Filling the deck with a bajillion burnables and using Oranguru with Instruct, this deck's goal was to punish GX Pokemon with a precious little single prize attacker. But once this resource management Oranguru was released, Magcargo now became Control's best friend, allowing you to grab whatever cards you needed with Zoroark's trade ability to control your opponent's board state into oblivion. Magcargo won the 2018 LIC in a Zoroark control deck by Daniel Altavilla. And as we continue on in Sun and Moon, here comes the familiar attack from Magnezone Prime, but now instead it's on a big basic attacker who has a crazy amount of support from the Ultra Beast archetype. It's Blacephalon GX. For 2 fire energies, Mind Blown lets you sack any number of energy cards attached to your Pokemon and put them in the Lost Zone, and it did 50 damage for each energy you put in the Lost Zone that way. It also had the powerful GX attack, which let you just take a prize card by discarding a prize card. And if it was a fire energy, you gotta attach it for free. So that was a thing that existed. When it was first printed, people loved to pair it with the evolving Ultra Beast Naganadel, which had the charging up ability, letting it accelerate energy card to itself from the discard pile. Later in life though, Blacephalon GX ditched Naganadel and went to full fire mode, using Welder to power its attacks up and started playing the second fiddle to the new baby Blacephalon. Blacephalon GX was powerful and popular, getting 3rd in 2019 NIC by Nathaniel Kaplan with a pure Blacephalon deck, while Shintaro Ito got 2nd in 2019's World with a Naganadel Blacephalon GX build. And here's the baby Blacephalon. Released in Unbroken Bonds, this baby fire Blacephalon was a powerful attacker for 3 energy cards, let you sack any number of fire energy cards from your hand, and did 50 damage for each energy sacked this way. While 3 energies seem like a lot, it pairs beautifully with Welder, meaning you could get going turn 1 if you had all 3 energy cards in hand. This deck either came in a green exploration flavor, which was a super powerful supporter card that could get you any 2 trainers from your deck if you had 0 abilities in play, allowing you to grab powerful fire items like Fire Leaf Rent or 2 fire crystals, or came in a Pidgeotto style deck. Pidgeotto had the Airmail ability, which let you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one of them in your hand, and put the other one on the bottom of the deck. Baby Blacephalon loved Welder and would occasionally use Blacephalon GX as a one-up attacker as a finisher for game. This powerful single prize attacker got 3rd in the 2019 NIC deck by Nathaniel Kaplan and 3rd in the Players' Cups final, number 2 by Hugo Laperriere. And here comes the card you and your mom are probably waiting for. It's Reshiram and Charizard GX. When you think of the best fire type card, chances are Reshiram and Charizard GX probably popped into your mind. It certainly did into mine. With the powerful support of Welder, the energy costs of Reshiram's attack were minimal. I mean, 230 damage for a flare deck was just 2 turns of back-to-back Welders, which if you're playing a regular Zard box was just 2 back-to-back Lele's. And 1 Welder could get you Outrage, which did 30 damage, plus 10 for each damage counters on Reshiram, and tag teams were bulky with a whopping 270 HP. They were worth 3 prize cards. cards. You could also one-shot other Reshizards if you got your Reshizard's Double Blaze GX attack powered up with 6 energy on one guy, which did 300 damage shred, and that was kind of key because for a while there, Keldeo GX with the ability that made it immune to typical GX attacks were... There was 2 flavors of Reshizard decks running around. Either you went all in on the no abilities to abuse Green's exploration, going quad cancel both Volcanion and Reshizard, or you went typical fire style backs using attackers like Eevee and Snorlax early on to power up your board, or Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff in the later Sun and Moon era, which could do 60 damage plus 60 more for each tag team your opponent had in play. And I have to say, Welder really made this deck work. If Welder did not exist, I don't know if Reshizard would have seen as much play as it did. Reshizard was both popular in the Zardbox variant as well as the Greens variant. In Worlds 2019, it took 3rd by the hands of Blaine Hill with a Greens version, while the Zardbox won LAIC that year by the hands of Robin Scholes. Since Welder was such a strong option in the meta at the time, Reshizard was also popular in some versions of Mewtwo and Mew GX, which took OCIC in 2020 by the hands of Nico Alabas, with the regular Zardbox coming in 2nd by the hands of Zach Lesage. And let's talk about that partner for Reshizard. Volcanion is a powerful face for fire. While not every Reshizard deck ran Volcanion, the Greens version did, since both of its attacks were very strong. If you started Volcanion and were going 2nd, you were able to, with a single energy attachment, search your deck for up to 3 energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you'd like. Keep in mind too that you could still play Welder going first turn 1, since turn 1 supported rules did not change until the release of Sword and Shield base set. The 2nd attack, High Heat Blast, was also super strong, and if you're able to get off that powerful turn 1 flare starter attack, your High Heat Blast was already at 110 damage since there was at least 4 energy in play. This baby Volcanion was also super key in other fire decks at the time. Heatran assisted Blaine Hills in getting 3rd at Worlds in the Green Reshizard deck. Heatran GX was popular when it first released, probably due to its cool ability Burning Road, which whenever Heatran GX switched to the active, moved any number of fire energies from your board to itself, and had the super powerful GX attack Hot Burn, which did 50 damage times the number of fire energies attached to it. While also not needing to pile all of your energy onto one guy that was worth 3 prizes. Instead, you could swing in from nowhere and still do enough damage to OHKO your opponent's active threat. Because of its low maintenance and ability to throw it into any fire type deck, and I do mean any. Heatran GX saw widespread usage in several different decks when it first released, and was even in its own little deck called Welderbox. As we leave the land of OP 3 prize GX attackers and go into Sword and Shield, which introduced OP evolving 3 prize attackers, there's not really a strong fire deck. Just some dudes who are most powerful at the beginning using the busted Sun and Moon fire support, like Centiskorch VMAX. Centiskorch VMAX has lacking results, especially in 2021, since tournament structure was super weird then because it was unclear whether or not real life events would continue. So the abundance of recording we got in 2020 because everything went online and everything got recorded suddenly went up and vanished because they came up with this new system, and there's like no data for 2021. However, Centiskorch VMAX was a cute deck that ran around and loved the powerful support of Welder, since his attack Gmax Centinferno did 40 damage plus 40 more for each fire energy attached to Centiskorch, and paired with Heatran GX you could swing for huge damage and then clean up with a quote-unquote little 2 prize Pokemon. And there was also Victini VMAX, and was featured in a Firebox by Kevin Kruger, who got 5th at the Players Cup 3 Global Finals. It was a fire deck box, and it was like the only one there. Victini VMAX was tanky and had the attacks Spreading Flames, which let you attack up to 3 fire energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like, and the powerful attack Max Victory. Its attack was only 2 energy costs and one-shot any Zacian V you ran into. Well, Here's some fun one-of tech cards that we can talk about, including Oricorio. And Oricorio only has results because it supported the very strong Fusion Strike Mew VMAX. And while not every deck opted to run this Oricorio, which reduced damage done to Fusion Strike Pokemon by 20, as the format went on, it appeared more and more in the remaining portion of the Mew VMAX deck lists. But all it ever was a one-of tech card to just make math a little more annoying and was not really a backbone to anything. But it helped Owen Cameraman get third in the 2023 OCIC and won Worlds that year by Vance Kelly. And then there's also Radiant Charizard. This card was probably the most impactful fire card of the Sword and Shield era, especially late Sword and Shield, since quite a few decks appreciated the synergy with the fire energy and it provided a powerful late game attacker, as the ability Excited Heart reduced the cost of its attack by 1 colorless for each prize card your opponent had taken, which meant for 1 fire energy and to 250 damage with a single prize attacker when your opponent had 2 prize cards remaining, forcing them to go through a single prize attacker or to get a gust card to seal up the game. However, it had hot competition from Radiant Greninja, so Radiant Charizard could only really fit into decks that already ran fire energy. However, one deck had a hankering for Radiant Charizard, and that was Lugia Archeops. Lugia V-Star's game plan was all about pulling special energy out of the deck, so Radiant Greninja's ability didn't really work too well. Instead, it ran Radiant Charizard as a single prize attacking option. The other decks that loved it early on were Charizard versions of Lost Box, who loved the cheap attackers that could do massive damage. Once the Scarlet and Violet base set came out, Radiant Charizard was a mainstay in Charizard EX decks, which could easily accelerate energy into play and loved the fire synergy. Dragon decks also liked this shiny lizard, as some early versions of both Dragapult and Regijago ran fire energy, making Radiant Zard an easy slip in. Torreklev won LAIC with Radiant Charizard as his Radiant Pokemon of choice in 2022, and he returned once again to win EUIC with a Charizard EX Pidgeot deck in 2024. And here's Entei V. For LAIC, Entei V made a roaring attack only to fade off into oblivion again. This is because of the printing of Paradox Rift, which introduced the future Pokemon Iron Valley EX, which had the ability Terrakium Bits, which when you switch from bench to active, let you put 2 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon once during your turn. In a format flush with Switch and Switch Card, a basic heavy deck built around Entei V emerged. Entei V had the fleet-footed ability, letting you draw a card once a turn if you're in the active spot, and had synergy with a powerful Forest Seal Stone. Now why Entei V instead of the other legendary Vs which had the same ability and attack? Well, probably because it synergized nicely with the single prize attacker Radiant Charizard. Entei V's attack Burning Rondo did 20 damage plus 20 per each bench Pokemon, regularly hitting between 120 and 220 damage. With Iron Valiance providing the damage boost and Entei V providing extra draw, this cute little deck made a splash on the internet and came to make a statement in LAIC in 2023 with a stunning second place finish by Noah Sawyer. And here's Chi-Yu EX, literally the spiritual reprint of Houndoom EX that we covered earlier. Chi-Yu EX sacks the top 2 cards your opponent's deck for a single fire energy, and for 2 fire energies did 100 damage and lets you choose up to 3 of your bench Pokemon and accelerate a fire energy from your deck to them. Chi-Yu EX started to seek success in the era of control-style decks. Both Snorlax style and Pidgeot control decks usually had one teched in to force a surprise mill on your opponent, sneakily winning you the game from nowhere. Chi-Yu helped Alessandro Cremascoli's Pidgeot control deck get third at EUIC in 2024. And here's Gouging Fire EX. Gouging Fire EX is a fat ancient trait Pokemon that for 3 energy could do 260 damage, but could not use that attack again until it left the active spot. A cute little deck emerged when Gouging EX first came out. 260 damage, KOs basically every big basic EX Pokemon that was out at the time. This deck used the special energy Jet Energy to switch Gouging Fire EX out of the active, and the Stadium Magma Basin to power up new attackers on the bench. Monkey Dory was also included because the ability Adrenaline let you remove the damage counters that you got from accelerating energy onto it from Magma Magma Basin. The powerful supporter for ancient trait Pokemon Sada's Vitality, accelerate energy onto your ancient Pokemon, making this deck actually fairly consistent with powering up your attackers. However, despite the power that Gouging Fire can showcase, it was more so resigned to being more of a one-of, which there's just not any fire decks running around the meta. In fact, the main fire attacking deck at the moment is Armarouge EX, who was paired with a baby Armarouge that has a fire off ability, letting you move as many fire energies from your bench to active as you wanted during your turn. This deck also ran the Radiant Heatran, which did 70 damage times the number of damage counters on that Pokemon, since it paired beautifully with Magma Basin. Armarouge EX itself was very tanky, as its ability Crimson Armor reduced damage done to it by 80 when it was at full HP. Its attack Scorching Bazooka did 40 damage plus 40 for each fire energy attached to it. Using Arceus' V-Star attack Trinity Nova, you can power up your board and then start swinging with Armarouge EX and Radiant Heatran to clean up your opponent's board. Now, fire, current, and well in the past hasn't been the hottest type of deck around. However, a change for that could be right around the corner in the new set Phantasmal Flames. The new Mega Charizard X EX is a fire type with a promising attack Inferno X, which does 90 damage per fire energy used back from your Pokemon, and has the powerful new partner Oricorio EX, which has the ability Excited Turbo, allowing you to accelerate an additional fire energy each turn if you have a Mega Fire Pokemon in play. The new supporter Fire Breather will also play super nicely with this pair, searching your deck for up to 7 basic fire energies and putting them into your hand. Other supporter cards like Clement and Lady, which came out before this, cap that energy search at 4, so this is a huge power buff they're trying to give to the fire typing. Anyways, let's sit back and look at the data. If we were organized them by the highest average percentage over the years they were played, we'd get Reshiram as number 1 with a 29.46 percentage used over 1 year. Magmar from Fossil as number 2 with a 27.08% in 1 year. Typhlosion Prime as number 3 from Heart Gold and Soul Silver with a 24.11% usage in 1 year. Radiant Charizard from Pokemon Go with a 16.07% usage in 3 years. Blaziken and Blaziken EX from Ruby and Sapphire and Team Magma vs Team Aqua at a 14.94% usage in 2 years. Pyroar from Flashfire with 11.11% usage in 1 year. And Emboar from Black and White with a 10.71% in 1 year. Blaze Arcanine from Gin Challenge with a 9.55% usage in 2 years. And Fernape SP Level X from Rising Rivals with a 9.47% usage in 1 year. And at number 10, Team Magma's Camerupt from Team Magma vs Team Aqua at 9.47% usage in 1 year. With an honorable mention in 11th place going to Reshiram and Charizard GX from Unbroken Bonds with a 9.02% usage over 3 years. And yeah, Reshiram is probably the best fire type card of all time. And while Reshiram feels like it should be the number 1 card, let's be real, Welder was the number 1 fire-related card from that era. Welder was played way more than Reshazard, and it shared the spotlight with 2 different versions of Blacephalon, so it makes sense that Reshazard makes up less in the meta than expected, and to me Magmar feels like a false number 2, since the data pool is so much smaller for that era, but then again, so is the card pool. To me, Reshiram makes sense as number 1. I even do Reshiram in the thumbnail in part remembering that Reshiram from Black and White base was very popular. And well, I was right. I didn't think it would be the number 1, but here we are. Anyways, what card do you think is the best fire type card of all time? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe because next time I will be finding the best grass card of all time. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys all in the next video, and bye!